All right, that was Prime Minister setting the stage for the G20 summit. Leaders are already there having their first session, deliberations going on, One Earth, and how to really bring all the crises together and to deliberate on them to find a solution. Remember, Prime Minister has said India's presidency is action-oriented, result-oriented, a lot of which has already happened. In fact, I'm told we are being joined in from Australia by Salvatore Babones, a professor, friend of India, and someone who speaks out loud on his love for India. Very good afternoon to you from New Delhi, Salvatore Babones. And your thoughts as the G20 proceedings happen here in New Delhi. Let's begin with that and then I'll ask you more questions.
Well, first, it's a pleasure to be known as a friend of India or someone who loves India, but I have to be honest, everything I do about India is purely objective. And I say that because of what I'm about to say about India and the G20. This G20 meeting really isn't about the G20. Very few people in the world care much about the G20 or pay much attention to it. This meeting is all about India, or as we're seeing, India that is Bharat. We'll see how that pans out. But everyone is interested in this particular G20 summit because it's being held in India, and this is India's moment on the global stage.
All right, Salvatore, the reason why perhaps people take on you whenever you speak on India is because from down under you speak as if you're sitting right here in New Delhi or Mumbai. That makes perhaps people wonder because you have a view and opinion on everything that's happening in India, which is fantastic as a friend of India. But then, Salvatore, what we want to know from you is that Australia, of course, is part of G20. Today we have seen African Union becoming a full-fledged member of G20. India has really championed and led from the front in terms of addressing the concerns of Global South. You think this coming together of Global North and Global South now is something which gives us hopes that we would have more durable solutions to the multiple crises we face and that India's leadership of Global South is something which is not sort of annoying the Global North?
I think everybody welcomes the inclusion of Africa, the African Union, in the G20 and sitting at the table. Of course, there are 55 member states of the African Union, and South Africa, the historical G20 member from Africa, can't represent the whole continent. South Africa represents only South Africa. The problem from an African perspective is that of the 55 countries in the African Union, no one of them is really systemically important enough to justify being present at the table at the G20, although collectively, Africa must be represented at the G20. So it's long overdue, and it's a great fact. It really is a great accomplishment that India is at this point bringing the African Union into the G20 on a permanent basis. It does reflect a southern perspective, so to speak. Now, I'm speaking here in Australia, but we think of Australia as part of the global north, despite our geography. I'm sitting here in Australia, but nonetheless, we recognize even here that the global south is severely underrepresented in international organizations. Now, I'm also going to put on that parade, which is to say that Africa is being admitted, the African Union is being admitted into the G20 precisely because the G20 is no longer as important as it used to be. When the G20 was founded in 2008, it was as an emergency measure. It was meeting every 3 months and then every 6 months. The African Union and Africa in general simply doesn't have the financial heft that many of the other G20 member states do, and it represents to some extent a dilution of the mission of the G20. Yeah.
All right, Salvatore, I'll let you go at this moment, but I hope you keep coming back to us over the next 2 days. And on that note, I believe I have to take a short break. On the other side, our rolling coverage of G20 proceedings from here at the International Media Center continue.